All right, cool. What's up, y'all? So I like to bring in agents that have ran our leads successfully. Individual agents, whether they're doing final expense or infinite bacon. This individual I have right here, this woman, she started working with me. I want to say like 5, 6 months ago or something like that. She came in a group of people actually, hit me up separately, asked me a ton of questions. It's like, hey, I'm a little nervous, but I'm definitely ready to pull the trigger. We started out, and I think that, and I'll let her tell it when we get to it, but the reason I brought her on here is because of all the agents that I've had with following the outline that I've given as being an agent myself. I feel like she's followed it to literally a T with the phone script, with the communication with our team, and even scaling. Because you all know I always talk about making sure when you do work with us, you start at a smaller package and you slowly work your way up. And she's literally been like on point about that. So without further ado, I got my friend here, Gio, that's going to make sure, she gives you guys some insightful information. So I'm going to hop straight into it. Thank you for, taking some time out of your day to meet with us. But let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to know is, as an agent, there's a bunch of different lead sources that you can run, right? We're not going to name any names, right? But nonetheless, what makes our leads different? Like, why did you choose to say, after the first month or the first few weeks, to like stick with us? What was it that kind of made us stand out to you in your experience?
Yeah. Number one, the support that you and your team gives. Like, I specifically work with you in Franklin. And you guys are always available. You're always responsive. Any questions, feedback, or anything that I throw at you, you're always responsive, super transparent. And I feel like you really take into consideration like what I'm questioning or what I'm saying. Which I greatly appreciate, and really just kind of sets you aside from most lead sources, because other lead sources, they don't make it quite as like personal as me and you. Like, we talk on the phone, we've texted, we've done the voice memos, we've done FaceTime, like we've done it all just to connect in as many different aspects if we needed to. So I think the support with you and your team is great, and unmatched. Number two, I think the consistency with the like positivity of the lead outcome, I think, has been consistent from day one. And you're very consistent, or you're very transparent about when you first start, or let's say you make some adjustments to the campaign, that there's going to be a little bit of a period where you're kind of waiting for things to ramp up. It just kind of works with the optimizing and all that stuff that's way over my head. But you're very transparent about, hey, this is going to take a couple days to really get going. And everything that you say you're going to do or say that's going to happen has absolutely happened. So you stuck to your word, which is huge. But as far as like the quality of the leads has always stayed super consistent. So even from when I first started to now, when I'm about 5 or 6 months in, they're just as great as they were day one. I only ran your leads for pretty much, like, now recently, just because I've tried to level up like my lead spend. So I'll like diversify a little bit here and there. Like, I'll do, I did your single pack for quite some time. And then I would tap into a couple different other lead vendors just to kind of add in
Right.
some further, lead flow. But as far as, whenever I call these clients, the information, is correct and exactly as it should be. For the most part, they, know what I'm talking about. They know the ad that I'm referencing. And they're, pretty high intent. There's a couple people, of course, here and there that are gonna, you catch them at the wrong time, or and it's not a good time for them to talk, or maybe they were interested and now maybe they've strayed away for whatever reason, and now it's up to me to kind of figure that out. But as far as for the majority of it, the leads quality has stayed super consistent. So that has really been great. And I think just kind of the consistent flow of, I know that I'm going to get at least roughly X amount, and then with this pack that I'm on, or whatever it may be. But like I said, I think that just the consistency of the leads altogether is super, super important. And that's what makes Lead Lab stick out more than any other source, in my opinion, as far as in my experience thus far.
Okay. Okay. And you touched on a few things that I would like to elaborate on. The first thing being, when you're calling these leads, this is probably my second most asked question is, do you one call close, or are you booking appointments, and why?
Yeah. So I think the goal in this industry should always try to be a one call close. Because, I mean, to be honest, like, the conversation is not necessarily something that people are excited to talk about. Like it's a necessity and people know that they have to have the conversation and get the coverage. But as far as sometimes getting to that point can be a little bit more difficult, I guess, if you will, with certain clients versus others. So I think I totally lost my train of thought here. Tell me the question again. I'm sorry.
No,
Train of thought.
it's all good. And we'll cut that part out too. So you're
The intro with the okay.
Yeah.
So the goal is to one call close. However, there are just some clients that, you know, it's not going to happen that way. So I would say I'm mostly one call close, but then the people that I do book appointments with, I try to be very intentional about booking that appointment with them so that it does stick and that they do show up to it. So I would say majority is a one call close.
Okay. And you actually made me privy to something the other day, that you do text, your clients if they do not respond. And that's probably a, 2A question I get asked is, and you can freestyle, it doesn't have to be exact, but what is your follow-up process when people don't pick up the phones? Are you sending emails? Are you sending texts? And what are you kind of like saying? Are you trying to get them to book an appointment straight from there? Or are you just introducing yourself and still trying to set up a call? What's your process for those clients that don't pick up, that you aren't able to initiate contact with at first?
Yeah. So I think getting them on the phone is what is going to get you to the finish line with the client. I think that there's very like the texting that I do with the clients. For me, I think that it's keeping them engaged so that when I do get them on the phone, they know who I am and they know what I'm talking about. So I almost think about it as like, it's really like number one, first and foremost, you need to get them on the phone because you can't really have the full on conversation to its fullest potential without getting them on the phone. I think like putting them on drip campaigns or texting them, I try and end it with like a specific question that they have to answer back to, not necessarily like, hey, book an appointment here. Because, there's so many like drip campaigns of texts that I get from just random stuff that I'm like, oh, I want to do that, but not right now. So it's like that text message is to remind me that I still, have that on my list of things to do, but maybe not right now. So even if people, they do text back, I try and pick up the phone and call them right away because I'm like, I know you're on your phone. And the goal is to get you on the phone. Right. But I try, like when I send out a text, I try and remind them and just use kind of the key words that are in the ad or what we're talking about, which is the funeral and final expense coverage. So I'll usually mention that in the text message, and then I'll usually end it with a question. Like I'll say, hey, Mary, this is Giovanna with the, final expense office about the request you put in, for the funeral and final expense coverage. Were you looking for yourself or for you and a spouse? Or, something along those lines with a question at the end that they're needing to respond to versus it just being, ended with like, hey, book an appointment with me here. Like there are some text messages I do send like that, but I try to add some sort of question there so that they're prompted to respond. Because then, okay, I have the right phone number. I have the right person. Now it's just a matter of getting them on the phone.
Wow. That's actually really good because you literally took the sales process, but just brought it to the phone because that's how we're trained, is to not ever let anything at any point in time until you're like the final end of the conversation. After that you've closed them is when you stop asking questions. Like everything has to end a question when it comes to sales. And you literally took that. I didn't even think about that. Like if I was texting to actually do that. Okay, cool. So for the new agent, this is the most common question I get. What's my phone script? We provide a phone script. When you first started working with us, we didn't even have one. I had people go watch the videos and I would tell you on the introductory call, but I didn't have a physical one until, we started getting a lot of agents and newer agents even who were requesting it. But what is your intro phone script? And then if you could just kind of tell agents some expectations with when they do get these people on the phone.
Yeah. So my intro is, hey, Trey, this is Giovanna Galeano. I'm giving you a call here with the final expense office here in Phoenix. Just calling to let you know that we did receive and process your request that was submitted online yesterday, it looks like, for the funeral and final expense coverage. It looks like you listed your daughter, Mary, as the beneficiary. Is that correct for you? Okay, perfect. I'm the medical underwriter that's been assigned to your request, so I'll be the one helping you out with this. We do things virtually now. Go ahead and grab a pen and paper when I give you my licensing credentials. And then we'll go ahead and get this taken care of for you really quick. And let me know when you're ready. And then so I just have them grab a pen and paper, give my licensing information. And then I personally, I think connecting with the client on a personal level before you kind of talk about business is really a way to leverage, and really just have the best outcome with the client. So I try and, really just listen on the phone for things that I can like connect with them with. Like I, use the beneficiary information if it's there, or if it's not there, I'll ask, what's your daughter's name? Or if there's a dog barking in the background, I'll be like, hey, what kind of dog do you have? Or, something like that to kind of bring their walls down a little bit. And that's more of like, I guess, just a sales thing versus leads thing, of course. But that's approach that I have that I think works really, really well, is kind of just connecting with them on a personal level first. And then kind of going into, okay, what are we looking for with coverage? What are we looking to protect? Do you know how much those types of things cost? And I like to do a good like educational approach just on the funeral and final expense in general. So that's kind of my intro and how I kind of set the call up. And then I let them know our process and what we're going to talk about and, what I'm going to ask them, and just kind of give them a good idea of how it's going to go through. And then as far as you said, like expectations.
Yeah. I'll kind of give you some, roll you into it. But you said something before we got on the call, and you actually texted me the past few weeks we've been talking. And I think this is so cool is like the communication is so important. You were like, hey, I've had a few people, who thought it was free, et cetera, et cetera. And that you referenced the ad and explain to them, that it doesn't say anything about that, because obviously on our ad, it literally has the words, this is not free, right?
Right.
People do get confused with the affordable. So if you could just explain to them what you told me, obviously I know it, but just for the agents in terms of that will happen, and kind of explain to them the mindset that they need to have when it does, because it's not frequent, but when it does, you do need to be prepared. And kind of how have you been able to have the correct mindset when it comes to running into those things? Because they are real. I'm not going to sit here and say everything is peaches and roses. It happens. Right. Could you walk the newer agents with through that when those type of things do happen?
Yeah. So, I let them know, hey, I'm not sure if you had filled out multiple requests. I mentioned that because number one, they probably did. And number two, I don't want to necessarily say, okay, well, how many requests did you fill out? But I typically say, people, in your position typically are filling out multiple requests. So I may have confused you. This is about the affordable plans, through Hillsborough County or through, Ohio State or whatever it is. So I kind of just reiterate that, hey, this isn't free. These are affordable plans. And I let them know, hey, I've been assigned to customize a plan that fits your budget. So this is something comfortable for you to be able to protect your family. And kind of just try and move on. Like I just kind of try and stray them away from that. Let's say worst case scenario, they hang up. I'll typically give it a day or two, and then I'll kind of try the same approach. But, I'll mention, hey, we spoke the other day. I know that there was some confusion on, this being free or not. And, this is an affordable plan for you. And, I'm sure that you would want to make sure that you have some sort of protection in place so that that overall financial burden is not left on your family. And I'll kind of reiterate that and, say, is that correct? Because, if someone, there's been very few cases where people have said, yeah, I don't care if they have that or something, but it's not as common. But you will get that like very much vaguely from time to time. But with those people, that also, points out that maybe they're, not as serious or not ready to try and, really move forward on that. So you also have to kind of accept that. But most people are going to understand when you're like, hey, you may have filled out multiple requests. This is not one that is said for free. I know that factually. I'm aware of what you had filled out, and you put this information. Here's your address. Here's your date of birth, and kind of just reiterate what they put on what they filled out, on the computer. So, and I'll ask, did maybe your spouse or son or daughter fill this out for you, on your behalf, and maybe you didn't actually see the ad, and maybe they did and just put your information. So I'll kind of really try and figure out like where they're getting this free from. And then, as we kind of talked about, that there was a couple clients that had figured out that they'd filled out multiple requests, and that there was another competitor that had filled out something that said that. And so, and then we kind of, got to the nitty gritty of that, and we're able to, correct them on what's actually realistic, because nothing in life is really free. So, it's like, it's going to be affordable and I'm going to make sure it's comfortable for you. But I really just kind of try to gain credibility in that, like in that point of the conversation, and just kind of get them to, trust me with being able to at least go through the information. I let them know, hey, if it doesn't make sense for you at the end, that's perfectly fine. At least we know what's available to you. We went through the options. We'll take a look. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, then that's perfectly fine. And the people that I usually say that to are usually the ones that I end up closing, because then they totally like take their guard down and just let me help you, let me do my job and help you and put you in the best position. So,
Yeah. I want to touch on a few things that you said. Number one, y'all, I want to give Gio her credit first and foremost, because few things. Number one, when it was, I want to say, and quote me on this, I think it was the end of April, maybe it was early May. You had sent me a text message and you were like, hey, Trey, when I get people to pick up the phone, it's great, but I'm struggling to actually get people like to pick up. I'm getting disconnected numbers. I think I told you this, but she's actually the reason why we now have, for all the agents that are getting onboarded now, we now have an additional double verify phone field where they have to put 2 phone numbers. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up, and it's going to roll me to my next question, is that when I told y'all that she literally followed what I said when we first met, I was literally like, yo, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything, just let me know. Because like I tell people, I've been an agent, so I'm not one of these people that, I don't think I'm above anybody. I don't feel like, if you tell me something, it's like, oh, you're just complaining or whatever. Like, you can ask her. The other day, she asked about some leads. I literally called them myself. Like, I recorded it, got one lady on the phone, and we figured things out together, because I really am I want you to be successful. If you're successful, I'm successful, and everybody's happy. But the reason I bring that up is, could you, for the agent, and I think this is so important, because you literally, if I had to pick somebody who's the example that works with us out of all the agents we have on communication and like how to optimize what you're paying for, you're like the blueprint for it. But if you could, for the newer agents that are in the position where they're like, hey, I'm used to doing lead vending where I just put my information in, I send something in, I don't talk to anybody, and I just get my leads, and it's like, shut up and dial. But you've literally used our system to your advantage, like literally from package 1 to package 2, walk through month by month. Like, you brought us agents that, you now have, you're literally utilizing the system and squeezing everything out of it. Could you kind of walk through the new agents on, I don't know if that's a mindset thing or, kind of what they should do to utilize myself and Franklin to the best of their ability, so that way they can get the most out of everything that they are paying for when they're working with us?
Yeah. I mean, I have always been someone that's like, I'm just going to go to the source and ask the question. Like, if I want to know more information or understand how this works a little bit better, like, I'm going to go directly to you and Franklin. Like, and the fact that there are lead sources out there that people use and they don't have like an account manager, like some sort of live individual that they can go to, talk to, ask questions, all of that is, I mean, now that I've been so blessed with working with you and having that like opportunity, I'm like, if I talk to a lead, like if I go to a lead vendor and they don't have an account manager for me, like someone live that I can talk to, I'm like, okay, like that's weird to me now. That I'm like, we're like on such a
Right.
good, you know what I mean? Like we have a good relationship and we're both in business and trying to like help each other win, right? So like just definitely leverage the opportunity that you guys give with your support team. Like leverage the opportunity, ask the questions, like figure out more of how it works. Like how I said earlier, the whole optimization, the ads, all the technical stuff like is way over my head. But like if I can call you and just like ask like, okay, what does really optimization mean? Like that was a question I asked you. I was like, what does that really mean? And I'm like, I don't need the full like, again, to go way over my head, but just give me like the cliff notes so I get a general understanding, because that helps me be able to also work the leads better. I think if I understand kind of what's happening a little bit in the background. So ask the question, like, pick up the phone and call, and like, you will never know unless you ask. And I mean, I don't think any question is silly. And, I don't need to know exactly how to run the ad, but I just want to know a little bit of how it's done, because if I'm like working this machine every day, then I want to be able to kind of have a little bit of understanding on it versus of just, like you said, shut up and dial kind of thing. So that I would definitely like leverage, who you have available to you and kind of just get an understanding. And also, like I ask yours and Franklin's opinion. I'm like, hey, based on how things are going, like, do you think that there's any adjustments that I could make that could, be beneficial? Like, you guys are the professionals. So, I'll of course have, ideas and input and whatnot about my campaign and ads, but really, like, I like to get your guys' point of view. And so it's like, if I didn't have you guys as a reference or someone to reach out to and have support from, then I would have no idea, right? So it's like, we're all trying to grow and build a business here, and I think like each other's feedback can only help one another just continue to grow in the industry. So yeah, that's one thing I would definitely advise, is just ask the questions and really kind of understand everything that's available to you with you guys and your team, and the lead information and potential itself.
Yeah. And I think that's the way to go about it, to really ensure the consistency. And I think that's what speaks to, you working with us, is the consistency. And I think that agents, sometimes I feel like they're a little timid because you said it earlier, they feel like, oh, it might be a dumb question. But one of the things that you did that, and I won't, say his name, but the individual I'm talking about, he's been working with us since we first started and is just absolutely crushing it. Like, he did the same thing. And I tell everybody when I meet, like, use us, like, please use us, because you, just like he himself, you all don't need to know how to actually set up or what the optimization or what the, what all the metrics are. But if you have a high level understanding of what's going on, it actually helps you when you understand, hey, number one, how do I pivot and know, okay, cool. I'm in this state, and based on kind of the things that Trey told me about how it optimizes, here, where else I could go. What licenses should I get? When I am, recruiting and bringing on agents, when do I bring an agent to Trey? Because you said something earlier, which is, I am not the person who says, hey, the only leads you can run are mine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. Right. If it's not, that's cool too. Right. However, you utilize it. My job is to make sure that when you are utilizing your stuff, that you're making money and that it's helping you progress your business forward. And like I said, we've had communication since the beginning of actually, setting that up and keeping the ball rolling. So we're almost at the end here. I've taken up a lot of your time. I do want to ask one last question though. So what should the agents and this is, I would say this is probably tied for one. This is probably tied for my number one question is, I get 10 leads. I get 100 leads. How am I going to close? How many appointments am I going to set? If you could just give rough estimates for the agent who, wants to know as much as they can before they get started in terms of numbers, what would you say? You can use 10 or 100. Out of how many leads should they book, close, present to, just any stats that you feel comfortable like sharing, and what their expectations should be for that. And we'll close it out with that.
Yeah. I think as far as like close ratio, it's not only about the lead quality, let's say, or high intentness. I think it's also about the agent. So for example, like when I bring my agents to you and I have them, come buy a pack or subscription, whatever it is, I've had them have a little bit of practice on the phone already, because I want them to be able to have the best potential with your high quality leads. And if you have someone that, already has experience, like another agent that has previous experience, then I would say, hey, start them up, with yours right away. But I think that it's important to have a little bit of like practice on rebuttals and objections and just having the conversation in general when you kind of then level up to the better quality, because with yours, you don't really get as many objections or rebuttals. Like, people know for the most part what you're talking about, expecting your call and ready to talk to you about it. So that is a part of it. And then also, I think like as far as my ratio, like I said, I help roughly about 30 families a month, let's say. And that's out of pretty much all of your leads, for at least for the last like 4 months consistently. I haven't really used any other lead source very much. A little bit here and there, like when we have lock-ins, but other than that, it's majority just yours. And I mean, out of the, let's say if I'm working a single pack and I get, let's say 110 leads, I mean, I'm closing 25, 30, maybe 35. in a month. So out of 100, let's say I'm, roughly at about that 30%, which is pretty good. Because at that point, depending on your area and, these people's budgets and whatnot, you're roughly closing about 1,000, per lead, give or take a little. So I'd say probably out of 100, let's say I'm closing about 25 to 30 in a month.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, y'all heard it. Y'all heard it here first. It's one thing for me to say, y'all. That's why I always say it's one thing for me to say it, but that's why I bring agents by.
yeah.
Tell you a little bit about what's going on. Last thing, if you have anything else you want to leave with the people, the newer agents, the floor is yours. If not, I can close it out. Just let me know.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say that with being a new agent and I was in the same position, like things really changed for me when I started using your leads. And that was also coinciding with upping my lead spend. As far as I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to spending X amount per month. And this is what I'm going to commit to because I'm looking to level up. Like I was stuck within that 10 to 15, 1,000 per month for a few months there in the beginning. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to spend a little bit more. I'm going to have a little bit heavier lead flow. And that's when literally my production almost doubled and it has been going up ever since. So I would just say that with you being a new agent, know that, in this role is scary. It's, stressful sometimes, but one thing that you really have to like be consistent with and hone in on and understand and get the formula perfectly correct for you and your business is figuring out your lead flow and your lead cost and what you need to be spending in order to what you want to profit. So if any new agents are kind of hesitating like I was at first of making the commitment of, the subscription or the weekly pack, whatever you're going to do, like you will never know until you try. So if you can commit to it, give it at least 3 months, like give it a 3-month trial. Then if it doesn't work for you, like, okay, then there's something else that you need to adjust. But that's kind of how I went it with you. I was like, I'm going to give it 3 full months, my 110% efforts of making this like a turning point for me in my business. And I'm still with you 6 months later. Like you did not steer me wrong. So
Yeah. No.
So here we are.
Well, I appreciate it for sure. Thank you for taking some time out out of your day, y'all. And like I always say, if you guys have questions, you can reach out to me directly or reach out to Franklin. The information will be, directly there on the website, and the information below as well. So I appreciate you for taking time out today, and you all have a great rest of the day.